I personally struggled to write this review, not because being negative is a bad thing, but because I can see effort has been put into this map pack, but it just doesn't work. And that's when writing something that won't be taken well becomes difficult. So before I start this, I want to make it clear I did what I could to love what I loved about this map pack. But in the end, the map pack I'm reviewing today, The Forgotten City, it just doesn't work. Available in the workshop in 4 separate pieces with players requiring additional packs to play, it comes in at around 280 megabytes in size. The Forgotten City is a map pack comprised of 5 levels with a whole bunch of secret areas, levels, and massive fights. The Forgotten City is very much a map made with desire to look like something Croteam would make, fitting in well with the Serious Sam aesthetic. Whilst Exception sought to differentiate itself from the rest, the Forgotten City dedicates itself to reaching that level of quality with its use of pre-made Croteam models and custom geometry with nice twists to give it its own unique look. This is great as it stops the Forgotten City from looking like any other random custom map. Just by looking at it, you can tell some thought was put into the layout. But be prepared to put down your game settings a bit to compensate for the beauty of these levels. I play Sam games on Ultra, but I had to put mine down to medium in order to have a good FPS. The maps may not be well optimized as it should be. With that said, the levels are, in order, the village, the water temple, the junkyard, the biosphere, and the battlefield, and a few secret levels added on if certain conditions are met. A standout level was the water temple, taking a more exploration and button pressing approach, as well as jumping puzzles. It's something not very much seen in any custom maps, so major props to Solace for that. Although there are some issues with the temple level itself, it isn't a bad idea, and I would like to see it expanded on to be more streamlined with the concept staying the same. With that said, the levels in the Forgotten City aren't all that big. They're actually pretty small. The main issue is that it looks big, because there's large periods of you fighting nothing and just running down lengths of road or hallways that have no right to be that big. But in some cases you'll come to a very long ass road or hallway and have to fight a million enemies in order to proceed. This is pretty awful as every few steps you take spawns a whole bunch of enemies to fight, and progress is slowed to a horrible crawl. In the first level, this is the most apparent, fighting tough enemies by the bagful with weak enemies, and you're expected to enjoy fighting them with underpowered weapons for extended lengths of time, with nothing to mix it up. Although the levels are very pretty, gameplay is where the map takes a huge hit in the balls, or hits you in the balls, take your pick. The battles in this game are long, and not the good type of long, the monotonous kind of long that makes you want to tear your hair out in frustration and boredom. That sounds bad, and even though I hate to share my opinion on this, it has to be said. To the Forgotten City's credit, the use of custom enemies and the return of enemies from Serious Sam 2 does spice up the map, and I went ooh at it. I thought that effort was very nice. These are available on the workshop, but it was nice to see them used for once, so props for that. The Forgotten City is built up on the same formula as Croteam's levels, but without as much finesse as some would expect. The Steam page for Forgotten City says there's more than 15,000 enemies in particular cases. In the Grand Cathedral from Serious Sam the Second Encounter, there's normally around 2,000 to 3,000 enemies. 5 levels with 15,000 plus enemies sounds like a shitload, doesn't it? 4 to 5 hours in that amount of levels sounds like a bit much, and it really is. The main problem with Forgotten City is that the pacing is fucked. At the start of the level you have your cults. You fight a handful of beheaded soldiers and some kamikazes, that's all good. If you grab the rocket launcher you fight about 20-30 more fish, and that's it. But then you go upstairs and are greeted with hordes of Gnars, then hordes of Clear with wereballs, so on and so forth. 10 minutes later, if you're lucky to get through the hordes in that time, you're facing biomechs, being sniped by soldiers, reptiloids, and everything else you've seen thus far. All that time you've got a shotgun, a double shotgun, and the atomic gun. Rocket launcher if you're lucky. And these things will come at you big time. But there's one thing on your side. The areas are so freaking big that more often than not, you'll find yourself looking around and seeing enemies standing there scratching their behinds, wondering where the hell you are. Thank God for that, since that allowed me to go take a whiz at one point and come back to find myself still alive. Once the forwards picked up, they don't stop. It's always fighting large amounts of enemies, and that's it. Serious Sam's main campaign had hordes, yes, but they fit to what arsenal you had. The Forgotten City shows its full hand on the table too quickly, and I must admit that didn't help when I got halfway through and just wanted to stop. But as I said before, the levels are pretty. The boring and lengthy fights are one thing, but the areas are gorgeous. Soleus' use of particle effects and already existing models really breathes some life into the areas that Croteam could not, especially in the hallway with the waterfalls with a big switch at the end. Absolutely gorgeous, and major props to Soleus for that. Unfortunately, in making these areas look as gorgeous as they are, some sacrifices appear to have been made. Enemy spawns are confusing at best. In the biosphere, I found myself sitting around and watching as enemies just ran circles around me for ages and not coming to attack me as I stood on the object that made them spawn in the first place. And they spawned in the hundreds there too, and I was reluctant to begin combat just to watch how many more spawned. Trust me, they spawned a lot more. Did I mention that if you die in some sections that it sends you all the way back to the start? The junkyard does that so often I wanted to kill something. Custom enemies, as I said, mix it up well. Transparent Sniper Zorgs and Zumball Pistoliers were nice, with some variations on the Arachnoids as well. They're the most standout parts of the battles and the enemy pack than any of the others. The Seekers are also a neat addition, but with the large travel times to get anywhere, I wouldn't be surprised if some people would rather skip them than run all around a section to get to them. Sound-wise, not much is different to set it apart, but it is done well, with the Biosphere having a very nice peaceful soundtrack to match the atmosphere, which was nice. But not much is different to expect here, but I did find the use of previous Serious Sam games music to be a nice touch. It does the job well and I have no issues with it. Ambience is used perfectly as well, so props for that. The Forgotten City is a very pretty map pack and really shows what you can graphically do with the series editor. Custom enemies and pleasant spins on basic concepts make it a unique experience, especially with its use of level ambience in areas like the Biosphere. However, bad enemy spawns, overly stressful and long battles, and some horrific respawns make it a hard map to recommend for anyone playing single player. It is more bearable in cooperative since you can share the enemies around, but chances are you'll find yourself having the same monotonous feeling as you play.